Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur. Welcome to a brief live stream of a breaking news story. And I guess before we begin, can anyone hear that little hiss coming from the lamp? I hope no one can, because if that is true, then I need to fix the lamp. And I don't want to fix the lamp. I've actually got a lot of expenses right now. Not poor, don't need money. No, not eBay. Not eBay for super chats or anything. Just, there's some things you don't want to spend money on necessarily. So anyway, this is a live breaking story, but it's going to be a brief live stream. So it should be, I would say, no more than 20 minutes of what's going on. And we have a breaking news story in the sense that former President Donald Trump is in the news today. And he's doing something that's kind of interesting. He is being the lead plaintiff of a class action lawsuit against the big tech. We're talking about Facebook, Twitter, Google, maybe even Amazon. I didn't read about Amazon, but who knows? Maybe he'll throw them in there. And he's suing them because he is accusing them of censoring him and violating freedom of speeches and showing biases against conservatives. Now, I'm going to read you the article and I'm going to comment on this because this is actually kind of an interesting thing. It's not as cut and dry as you would like to think it is. So let's read this article from ABC News. Former President Donald Trump announced Wednesday he is filing class action lawsuits against three, okay, so Amazon's not one of them, of the country's largest tech companies, Facebook, Twitter, and Google. Hey, Keys Nation, welcome. I will answer that question in a bit. All of which have banned the former president from their social media platforms. At a press conference at his Bedminster, New Jersey golf club, because of course Trump's going to make an announcement at a golf club, Trump announced a, quote, major class action lawsuit against three companies demanding a stop to the blacklisting, banishing, and canceling that you know so well. The former president is currently banned from Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And he said, I'm going to try to do my best Donald Trump voice, today, in conjunction with the America First Policy Institute, I'm filing as the lead class representative a major class action lawsuit against the big tech giants, including Facebook, Google, and Twitter, as well as their CEOs, Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai, and Jack Dorsey, three real nice guys. I'm sure he was being facetious there. The former presidents of the lawsuit seek injunctive relief to, quote, allow prompt restitution and really restoration. In addition, we are asking the court to impose punitive damages on these social media giants. So what is this about? Well, basically, Trump got banned from these platforms and he's not happy about it. So he's suing them. But before you actually start jumping up and down and say, yay, Trump's throwing a temper tantrum. God, this guy's such a sore loser. Will he ever give up? I have to give the devil his credit where it's due. He's not completely wrong. Now, I don't know how the lawsuit is written out precisely. I don't even know if it's officially been filed yet. That's actually one thing that's not entirely clear about this. So a lot of this depends on how the lawsuits are written. If they are going after lawsuits just to get him reinstated for being censoring, he's got, well, here's the thing. He's got a point on a couple, and he's got no point on one. If, for example, if he files a lawsuit and it's basically, I'm suing because I feel they censored me, and he sues Twitter, Facebook, and Google, then Twitter gets off scot-free. Trump deliberately violated Twitter's user agreement policy. He violated their codes of conduct, and he has no grounds to sue Twitter. But I've stated before, and I will say it again, when it comes to Facebook and Google, because he was banned on Facebook and YouTube as well, he might actually have a point. He didn't actually break any terms of service on those platforms. They banned him out of fear, because here's the thing. It is probably reasonable to assume. It's reasonable to assume that if Trump was banned on Twitter, then the next day he would have gone to one of those platforms and started sending messages on Facebook or YouTube. That said, he did not actually do it. He did not get a chance to do it, but he was violated for breaking terms and service rules he did not officially, break. Therefore, because of the assumption, maybe he has a point that there was some bias on his part. Now, here's what's really interesting. He mentioned it's a class action lawsuit. And that's where things can be much trickier. Now, I'm assuming he's doing it as a class action lawsuit for a couple reasons. First of all, those are much easier to win. I don't know how serious Trump actually wants to get back on these platforms. To be perfectly frank, I don't know how seriously he wants to get back on the platforms. But you know what he does like? He likes money. I think even his supporters will say he does love his money. So class action lawsuits are notoriously easy to win. They're extremely easy to settle with. Heck, how many Uber class action lawsuits have I discussed on this very channel and told people, don't get your hopes up too high that this is actually going to change anything. Class action lawsuits are settled relatively fast because lawyers typically take between 35 to 40% of whatever the settlement is. As a result, lawyers are incentivized to settle rather than see class action lawsuits through to the end. And they do that because even though the plaintiffs are getting pennies on the dollar for their complaint, the lawyer is making out like a bandit. The lawyer gets a lot of money, and so they're incentivized to settle fast. So if Trump does that, maybe he's just looking for an easy payout, and who knows? It depends who his lawyer is. If his lawyer is someone who's close to the family, he might just want to pay out so that the family can get some money. Who knows? Now, the reason I'm not entirely sure about that is because he could also settle if he was just bringing it one-on-one, but who knows? Maybe the case would have a better chance of getting thrown out if it was one-on-one, but by doing a class action, maybe other people, preferably other conservatives who have been banned on these platforms, like, for example, maybe Milo Yiannopoulos, maybe he could join the class action lawsuit. I don't know. Maybe Candace Owens would like to. I'm not saying I like these people, by the way. I'm not saying I dislike these people. I'm just saying they might actually join this class action lawsuit. So you start getting some high profile people who can prove that they also had lost their accounts and maybe they did not violate any terms of service particularly. Maybe they would join too. Now, I see someone, Keys Nation, I believe, is in there, and he's saying they're private companies and they can do whatever they want. But maybe they can't in this case. And let me explain why. And for the record, even though I agree that they're private companies and they can allow whoever they want on their platform, considering they have de facto monopolies, I don't think that's a good thing. But even ignoring that, they might not be in the right to do this right now. And let me explain why. Because there was a point where there was some politicians out there, both Republican and Democrat, this was the same for both of them, that started blocking people on Twitter and Facebook because they didn't like the comments, maybe they didn't like the people, maybe they didn't like the questions that were being asked. Who knows what the reason was? They just didn't like those people, so they started blocking them. Well, those people sued and successfully won because in the court's opinion, if you are a public figure who is serving, which is a politician, for those who are not aware, then the politician cannot block people. After all, the public servant is serving the people who either did or did not vote for them, does not matter. They're serving the people. And if the people cannot have access to the public figure, and that is what social media is, it is social media, then it was ruled that the public figures cannot block people. They have to let those people have access to them. Whether they respond to these people or not is kind of besides the point. And this goes for everyone. Like if whoever's running the President Biden account right now, or the Senator Mitch McConnell, or the, I don't know what her title is, the AOC, if any of their Twitter profiles started blocking people, they could actually be sued, and they would probably lose because the president has been set that as public figures, you cannot block people. After all, you represent the people, therefore the people must have access to you. And yet, big tech removed, at the time, President Trump from the platforms. That is a tech company removing the public figure, the public representative from the people. Now, again, should this actually go to court? I think Twitter gets off scot-free. Twitter had a legitimate reason to ban President Trump. President Trump violated terms of service, and they could fall back on that. But Facebook and Google, they might have a much tougher time arguing that case, because not only did former President Trump not break their terms of service, but because he was president at the time, these companies have also removed the public representative from having access to the people. So there's a couple of gray areas there, and former President Trump might have a case when it comes to those companies. Now, will he actually win? I don't know. And again, I don't even know if he wants to win. Like I said, it's a class action lawsuit, and it's hard to say why it's going to be a class action lawsuit. Maybe it's a class action lawsuit because he just wants a settlement, and he knows that it's easier to get a settlement from a class action lawsuit. Maybe it's a class action lawsuit because you get enough people to sign up for it, then it has to go to court, whether the case has validity or not. I do believe that Trump is not doing this completely for altruistic reasons. In fact, I believe he's doing it because he wants more attention, and he wants to be back in the public spotlight, and the public spotlight is saying no. My stance for Facebook and Google was personally this: let him back on. He'll say something stupid, and you can ban him in probably 10 minutes. Guy cannot help himself. So let him back on and ban him for a legitimate reason this time. It probably would not take very long, if we're being perfectly honest. But the lawsuit was an interesting one, because here's the thing, I don't completely disagree with it. I do believe that big tech does have a bias. The Project Veritas things show it. I also don't believe that people should not be banned for any reason whatsoever. I don't think Twitter and Facebook should be the wild, wild west. Yeah, there's some hypocrisy when I see certain people who have broken the rules many, many times not get any retribution. They don't get banned. They don't get timed out. They don't get anything. But other people who do something once, they get it right away. And usually, you know, you have to wonder, because the people who get away with murder and the people who don't, there tends to be a correlation between them either getting reprimanded or not getting reprimanded based on their political affiliation. I'm not saying that's deliberate, but it appears to happen that way. So the class action lawsuit, you know, I think if it's just for general censorship and showing, because here's the thing, algorithms can't be biased. They can't. Sorry, I take that back. I misspoke. They can be biased in a strange way. The algorithms typically learn, and they start picking up on things. So you say, okay, people who think this, you know, like, let's say someone's an anti-vaxxer, and I've made it very clear. I think you should get your vaccination. I have been vaccinated for several months. It's been out there for a year. No one's died from, maybe one person has died from it, from the Johnson & Johnson, but otherwise no one's died from it. Please do what you can and be safe. Get your shot. But let's say you don't want to, and you think it's a conspiracy. You think they're putting microchips in you or something like that. Okay, so Twitter, the algorithm, and the Facebook algorithm mans that viewpoint, but then the algorithm is programmed to learn, and then they start going towards people who maybe they're not necessarily anti-vax, but they are not certain about this one because it was developed in a record amount of time, and they express that viewpoint. Well, the algorithm picks up that, hey, that person is now banned, and they're not necessarily even conservative. They're sometimes Republican. But then the algorithm goes and it learns some more. It says, okay, so people with these viewpoints tend to have these viewpoints. And since they share a commonality, let's start removing people with these viewpoints. So the algorithm can be extremely biased depending on how the initial thing is written. So I think that does need to be looked at. I think it does. I mean, ideally, humans could moderate it all, and you could have a human looking at it, and then you could see who was responsible for removing someone or something that should not have been removed. But we know that that's not realistic. These things are way too powerful. They're way too big. And they just, they're going to need bots to run them, but the bots are a problem. So what are my final thoughts on this? I do believe Trump is doing this to get attention. I believe he is still upset and he wants to be back in the spotlight. This is one of the only ways he can do it right now, is to sue them. But I would be lying if I said his lawsuit did not have some inkling of merit. I believe he does. I think Twitter's off the hook because he actually violated their terms of service. He did. I'm sorry. I know I have some viewers who don't think he did, but he absolutely did. Let's make it abundantly clear. He helped incite what happened on January 6th. He did. He absolutely did. I believe that. Doesn't matter how many things he did that I liked during his presidency. He responded to losing the election in the worst possible way, in all the worst possible ways. Had he actually stepped down the way he was supposed to, maybe he would have enough support to come back, but that's not how it is. So I believe he did incite, and he was rightfully reprimanded for doing that. But he didn't actually break any rules on Facebook and YouTube, and they removed him anyway. I think that was wrong. And I do think the algorithm does show a bias. I think it's worth exploring. I want the tech companies regulated. That's what I want. I really want the tech companies to be regulated. I think they've got way too much power, and I think they constantly abuse that power. And hey, if this is the first step we have to do to get them held accountable, you know what? I'm all for it, even if it is being led by former President Donald Trump. But again, I don't know how much he actually cares. He might just be looking for a settlement, and if that's all he's looking for, he'll get a settlement, and he'll get it fast. But anyway, that is where we are going to end. Sorry that I do not have time to answer anyone's question. We will do a more proper live stream later on this week, where we can interact a little bit more. I just wanted to get this out there real quick. But I would like to know, what do you all think about this? Do you think this is a legitimate lawsuit? Do you think Trump has a point? Or do you think Trump's just being a big baby and he just wants attention? I would love to know what you think. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.